Hey guys, I'm gonna hop in and do a really quick read because we're almost done with Pride and Prejudice. I am on chapter 48, page 344, and I think this is no, it looks sort of long, so it'll probably take the full 30 minutes. I was trying to just jump in and jump out because I got a lot going on today. But I really want to get the read in. And I didn't even go to Discord first. Sorry about that, to warn y'all, because I just came in and jumped right online. And by the way, we broke 11,000 today. Woo! 11,000 readers are out there reading books. And I think that's, hey, Yasvani, I did this for you. Fareed, hi. I've also heard from some of my teachers that they hate when I chat in the live chat because some of their students just get so confused by it. So I'm going to try and do better about that. So I'll try, if you're here just to say, hey, if you hang around for the whole read, I'll greet you afterwards. Like Miranda Vega, I'm glad you're popping in to say hi. I'm just saying because so many teachers have told me it's very disconcerting for their teachers to have these weird interruptions. So either I can do it at the beginning or I can do it at the end and acknowledge everybody. But I'm going to try to read like consecutively without stopping, except to explain stuff from the story. So don't get your feelings hurt. And those of you that stay, if you see somebody come in and say hi, and I don't say hi to them, maybe explain to them why I'm doing it. I'm not changing and turning into a mean troll. So let's read. Hey, Muniba, before I get started. 344. Instead of receiving any such letter of excuse from his friend as Elizabeth half expected Mr. Bingley to do, so as a recap, let's remember Elizabeth has been kind of attacked by Lady Catherine de Bourgh, who does not want Elizabeth to marry Mr. Darcy. And Elizabeth's like, what are you talking about? We're not engaged. And then she got a letter from Mr. Collins to say, oh, you better not marry Mr. Darcy. Lady Catherine de Bourgh doesn't like it. And her father came and said, can you believe how ridiculous all this is going on? And so Elizabeth's just trying to hold herself together and keep her pride in place. Fareed, I did do it late. Better late than never, though, right? I mean, at least you get a read today. The gentleman arrived early, and before Mrs. Bennet had time to tell him of their having seen his aunt, of which her daughter sat in momentary dread, Bingley, who wanted to be alone with Jane, proposed their all walking out. It was agreed to. Mrs. Bennet was not in a habit of walking. Mary could never spare time, but the remaining 5 set off together. Bingley and Jane, however, soon allowed the others to outstrip them. They lagged behind while Elizabeth, Kitty, and Darcy were to entertain each other. Now, where did I miss it? Mr. Darcy showed up. Oh, in the sentence that I started. That's what happens when you skip over a sentence. And that's a good reading comprehension thing. If all of a sudden you're lost, go back and figure out where did you miss that. So I skipped that part of the letter. It said, Mr. Bingley showed up. He was able to bring Darcy with him to Longbourn before many days had passed after Lady Catherine's visit. And I just missed that in my brain. I think I read it out loud, but I didn't receive it. So that happens when you read, and it's part of reading comprehension to build. You know, when you get into a place where you're lost, go back and say, when did that happen? What happened there? So there she is with Darcy, and she's talking with Darcy and Kitty, and they're in a little walking group together. Very little was said by either. Kitty was too much afraid of him to talk. Elizabeth was secretly forming a desperate resolution, and perhaps he might be doing the same. They walked towards the Lucases because Kitty wished to call upon Maria, and Elizabeth saw no occasion for making it a general concern. When Kitty left them, she went boldly on with him alone. Ooh, the two of them walked alone. Now was the moment for her resolution to be executed, and while her courage was high, she immediately said, Mr. Darcy, I'm a very selfish creature, and for the sake of giving relief to my own feelings, care not how much I may be wounding yours. I can no longer help thanking you for your unexampled kindness to my poor sister. Ever since I have known it, I have been most anxious to acknowledge to you how gratefully I feel it. So she's like saying, oh, Mr. Darcy, I know I'm not supposed to know, but I know you helped my sister and my family, and that was super kind of you, and thank you. I want to thank you for that. And so let's see what Mr. Darcy says to that, because, you know, he's so prideful himself. I'm sorry. Exceedingly sorry, replied Darcy in a tone of surprise and emotion, that you have ever been informed of what may, in a mistaken light, have given you uneasiness. I did not think Mrs. Gardiner was so little to be trusted. You must not blame my aunt. Lydia's thoughtlessness first betrayed to me that you had been concerned in the matter, and of course I could not rest till I knew the particulars. Let me thank you again and again in the name of all my family for that generous compassion which induced you to take on so much trouble and bear so many mortifications for the sake of discovering them. If you will thank me, he replied, let it be for yourself alone, that the wish of giving happiness to you might add force to the other inducements which led me on. Oh, he's glad that she liked it. So he still likes her. I shall not attempt to deny, but your family owe me nothing. Much as I respect them, I believe I thought only of you. Oh, everybody go, ooh. Elizabeth was too much embarrassed to say a word. After a short pause, her companion added, you are too generous to trifle with me. If your feelings are still what they were last April, tell me at once, what were her feelings last April? She ripped him a new one and said, I will never marry you. You're a horrible man. And he's like, been holding out hope all this time. My affections and wishes are unchanged, meaning he still wants to marry her. But one word from you will silence me on this subject forever. Elizabeth, feeling all the more than common awkwardness and anxiety of his situation, now forced herself to speak, and immediately, though not very fluently, gave him to understand that her sentiments, her feelings, had undergone so material a change since the period to which he alluded as to make her receive with gratitude and pleasure his present assurances. All that fancy way of saying, she's told him, I was wrong, and I do have feelings for you. Oh, it's getting good. The happiness which this reply produced was such as he had probably never felt before. So she broke through that hard shell of Mr. Darcy, and he expressed himself on the occasion as sensibly and warmly as a man violently in love can be supposed to do. Had Elizabeth been able to encounter his eyes, she might have seen how well the expression of heartfelt delight diffused over his face became him. But though she could not look, she could listen, and he told her of the feelings which, improving of what importance she was to him, made his affection every moment more valuable. They walked on, without knowing in what direction. There was too much to be thought and felt and said for attention to be on any other object. So they're totally wrapped in each other at that moment, just like Bingley and Jane had been. She soon learnt that they were indebted for their present good understanding to the efforts of his aunt, who did call on him in her return through London, and there relate her journey to Longbourn, its motive, and the substance of her conversation with Elizabeth, dwelling emphatically on every expression of the latter. If you see somebody wandering behind me, it's my daughter. Sorry about that. Which in her ladyship's apprehension peculiarly noted her perverseness and assurance in the belief that such a relation must assist her endeavors to obtain that promise from her nephew, which she had refused to give. But unluckily for her ladyship, its effect had been exactly contrariwise. Thank you, Yasvani. It taught me to hope, said he, as I had scarcely ever allowed myself to hope before. I knew enough of your disposition to be certain that, had you been absolutely irrevocably decided against me, you would have acknowledged it to Lady Catherine frankly and openly. I've got to pause a moment because my air fryer is beeping at me. You just have to pull it out, put some olive oil on it and some sasheries and just flip it first before you do that. And then do you know how to set it? Another 15 minutes. Sorry, we're cooking. Yeah, those of you that are reading along, this is not a part of the book. Yeah, and the olive oil's to the right. There's in that drawer right there, Renee, okay, I'll just let you do it your way. There are tools. I don't know what you call them. I have an air fryer and I'm making a chicken. So let me see so Fareed left, Ruby hi, the Biza, there you go, hi to you. And Yasvani, thank you so much for letting me know. But since I paused and I'm not chatting, hopefully my readers will understand that dinner's getting cooked. We're having chicken and penne pasta tonight. Want to join us? So back to reading. So it's gotten good, right? They're going to end up together. So we're definitely at the denouement. To the right, to touch the right, and you'll go the arrow to the right, and it should be 15 minutes is what you want. Okay, and then it should just start. So he thought if she really didn't want to be married to him, she would have said decisively so to his aunt when she confronted Elizabeth. And so by not doing that, he had the courage to come back to see, are you still interested? Is there a chance? So he overcame his pride and prejudice to take a risk and to be vulnerable. The recollection of what I then said, of my conduct, my manners, my expressions during the whole of it is now, and has been many months, inexpressibly painful to me. Your reproof, so well applied, I shall never forget. Had you behaved in a more gentlemanlike manner, those were your words. You know not, you can scarcely conceive how they have tortured me, though it was some time, I confess, before I was reasonable enough to allow their justice. I was certainly very far from expecting them to make so strong an impression. I had not the smallest idea of their being ever felt in such a way. I can easily believe it. You thought me then devoid of every proper feeling. I'm sure you did. The turn of your countenance I shall never forget. As you said, I could not have addressed you in any possible way that would induce you to accept me. Oh, do not repeat what I then said. So he remembered word for word how she had rebuked him and rejected him. These recollections will not do it all, I assure you, that I have long been most heartily ashamed of it. Darcy mentioned his letter. Did it, said he, did it soon make you think better of me? Did you, on reading it, give any credit to its contents? She explained what its effect on her had been and how gradually all her former prejudices had been removed. Remember, if you're annotating for class and your teacher has you tracking examples of prejudice, this is 348 and a very good example of it. I knew, said he, that what I wrote must give you pain, but it was necessary. I hoped you have destroyed the letter. There was one part especially, the opening of it, which I should dread your having the power of reading again. I can remember some expressions which might justly make you hate me. The letter shall certainly be burnt if you believe it essential to the preservation of my regard. But though we have both reason to think my opinions not entirely unalterable, they are not. I hope I quite so easily changed as that implies. Like, I hope you don't think I'm fickle. When I wrote the letter, replied Darcy, I believed myself perfectly calm and cool, but I am since convinced that it was written in a dreadful bitterness of spirit. The letter perhaps began in bitterness, but it did not end so. The adieu is charity itself. The ending is charity, like generous. But think no more of the letter. The feelings of the person who wrote and the person who received it are now so widely different from what they were then that every unpleasant circumstance attending it ought to be forgotten. You must learn some of my philosophy. Think only of the past as its remembrance gives you pleasure. That's a good line. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you agree that the only reason you should dwell on the past is if it gives you pleasure? Or do you think you should think of the past and learn from the mistakes? You could look at it a couple of ways. It would be a great jumping point for a essay statement, an essay comment. And Litzy, I see you. Hello, I'm glad you're here. I'm trying not to interrupt my reading and interact with the readers as much because I understand it's very hard for some of my teachers. So let me continue. I cannot give you credit for any philosophy of the kind. Your retrospections are so totally void of reproach that the contentment arising from them is not of philosophy, but what is much better, of ignorance. But with me, it is not so. Recollections will intrude which ought not to be repelled. I have been a selfish being all my life in practice, though not in principle. As a child, I was taught what was right, but I was not taught to correct my temper. So she's saying I was quick-tempered, I would speak too quickly, and I need to change that. Knowing you has changed that in me. My prejudicial behavior, I've learned, was wrong. I was given good principles, but left to follow them in pride and conceit. Oh no, that's him talking. Unfortunately, an only son for many years, an only child, I was spoiled by my parents, who, though good themselves, my father particularly, all that was benevolent and amiable, allowed, encouraged, almost taught me to be selfish and overbearing, to care for none beyond my own family circle, to think meanly of all the rest of the world, to wish at least to think meanly of their sense and worth compared with my own. Such I was from 8 to 8 and 20, 28. Um, and such I might still have been, but for you, dearest, loveliest Elizabeth. Your truth with me broke me of my pride and my arrogance. What do I not owe you? You taught me a lesson, hard indeed at first, but most advantageous. By you, I was properly humbled. I came to you without a doubt of my reception. You showed me how insufficient were all my pretenses to please a woman worthy of being pleased. Had you then persuaded yourself that I should? Indeed, I had. What will you think of my vanity? I believed you to be wishing, expecting my addresses. My manners must have been in fault, but not intentionally, I assure you. I never meant to deceive you, but my spirits might often lead me wrong. How you must have hated me after that evening. Hate you? I was angry perhaps at first, but my anger soon began to make a proper direction. I am almost afraid of asking what you thought of me when we met at Pimperley. You blamed me for coming? No, indeed. I felt nothing but surprise. She's trying to retrack all of this relationship from, she wants to know what he thought during all of that. Your surprise could not be greater than mine in being noticed by you. My conscience told me that I deserved no extraordinary politeness, and I confess that I did not expect to receive more than my due. My object then, replied Darcy, was to show you by every civility in my power that I was not so mean as to resent the past, and I hope to obtain your forgiveness, to lessen your ill opinion by letting you see that your reproofs had been attended to, that I was changed because of what have you said. I was hoping that I could show you I was a better man. How soon any other wishes introduced themselves, I can hardly tell, but I believe in about half an hour after I had seen you. He then told her of Georgiana's, that's his sister, delight in her acquaintance, and of her disappointment at its sudden interruption, which naturally, reading to the cause of that interruption, she soon learnt that his resolution of following her from Derbyshire in quest of her sister had been formed before he quitted the inn, and that his gravity and thoughtfulness there had arisen from no other struggles than what such a purpose must comprehend. She expressed her gratitude again, but it was too painful a subject to each to be felt on farther. After walking several miles in a leisurely manner and too busy to know anything about it, they found at last, on examining their watches, that it was time to be at home. And remember, we talked about, man and woman being off alone together, that, maybe they're in trouble. What could have become of Mr. Bingley and Jane was a wonder which introduced a discussion of their affairs. Darcy was delighted with their engagement. Remember, originally he was against their engagement. He didn't think that Jane was truly interested in Mr. Bingley. So he's changed in that way too. If your teacher has you tracking changes in character, this would be an example of it. Darcy was delighted with their engagement. His friend had given him the earliest information of it. I must ask whether you were surprised, said Elizabeth. Not at all. When I went away, I felt that it would soon happen. That is to say, you had given your permission. I guessed as much. And though he exclaimed at the term, she found that it had been pretty much the case. On the evening before my going to London, said he, I made a confession to him, which I believe I ought to have made long ago. I told him of all that occurred to make my former interference in his affairs absurd and impertinent. His surprise was great. He had never had the slightest suspicion. I told him, moreover, that I believed myself mistaken in supposing, as I had done, that your sister was indifferent to him, and as I could easily perceive that his attachment to her was unabated, I felt no doubt of their happiness together. Elizabeth could not help smiling at his easy manner of directing his friend. Did you speak from your own observation, said she, when you told him that my sister loved him, or merely from my information last spring? From the former. I had narrowly observed her during the 2 visits which I had lately made her here, and I was convinced of her affection. And your assurance of it, I suppose, carried immediate conviction to him? Excuse me, I'm going to pause for a moment. I would do maybe another 10 minutes just to be sure. Oh, well, another 15 then. It did, Bingley said, most affectedly modest. His confidence had prevented his depending on his own judgment in so anxious a case, but his reliance on mine made everything easy. So Bingley just wasn't self-confident enough, and everybody had already gotten in his head, his sisters and such had already gotten, there's my grandpuppy, had already gotten in his head to say that, hey, Yoko, you want to be on live read? Sorry. That they had already gotten in his head that he couldn't be sure that Jane was the right person. So when Darcy told him, I approve of this connection, Bingley felt the confidence to go and immediately ask her. He was angry, but his anger, I am persuaded, lasted no longer than he remained in any doubt of your sister's sentiments. He has heartily forgiven me now. Elizabeth longed to observe that Mr. Bingley had been a most delightful friend, so easily guided that his worth was invaluable, but she checked herself. She remembered that he had yet to learn to be laughed at, and it was rather too early to begin. So she still wants to change Darcy. Is that healthy in relationships? A good discussion. In anticipating the happiness of Bingley, which of course was to be inferior only to his own, he continued the conversation till they reached the house. In the hall, they parted. Okay, it's not done, but they're together. So what do you think about it? Are you excited? Do you think Darcy and Elizabeth are a good couple? And let me see. Yasvani, you've been such a good host for me. Ryan Watts, I'm glad you're here. I'm having a great day. I appreciate that. I just wanted to jump on real quick. It was only a 21-minute read to get more of the book done. We're almost done. And we broke 11,000, so thank y'all. I have to shout out to Jill because she was one of my friends that was a holdout that never subscribed, so she put us over the edge. Ruby, I'm so glad to see you, or not see you, but know you're out there. Wesley, I didn't say hello to you if you're still there. And Kelly, hey, good to see you. I'm really trying to be more disciplined about reading while I'm reading and just chatting at the beginning and the end. I hope you guys can understand that. And Yasvani, thank you so much for being my host that told everybody what was going on so they didn't feel offended. I'm going to have some family dinner. I hope you guys have a great evening too. Pardon my grandpuppy for chatting with us. She just wanted to be on the live feed. Maniba, it's a good book, right? Did you expect the ending? I'm so excited about it. I mean, I already knew the ending because I've read it. It's one of my favorite books. I hope you guys have a great evening. If you haven't subscribed, please do it because we want to keep growing. And if you haven't rung the bell, so you know when I crazy time, because I'm not predictable, you never know when I'm going to jump on. If you want to be part of the Best Tutor Friend BTF Club, it's not really a club. Join Discord, and it's on one of the links of the previous live reads. We have them on at different times, and I usually let people know that I'm going to go live. I usually chat and check in. We do all kinds of fun discussion, and we can get deeper into a discussion of Pride and Prejudice and what you think. So bye, everybody, and remember, I will read to you next time. See ya.